Hi, this is Mike Peterson from Challenge Island, Oakland County East, back with another one of our Steam-tastic Fridays. Today we're going to talk about the T in STEAM, which stands for technology. Now, technology is really just a big word for solving problems. So we're going to talk about some problems that we can solve in the winter. So before we get into that, let me give you a little quiz here. So I've listed some sports on these 2 pages here. So I got 4 sports over here: rock climbing, running, basketball, and tennis. I've got these ones over here: skiing, skating, bowling, and sledding. I wonder if you can figure out what do these 4 have in common, which is the opposite of what these 4 have in common. And I'll give you a hint. The key word here is friction. So today we're going to be talking about friction in today's broadcast. So in a lot of sports, it's really important to keep track of what friction is doing for you. So just as a reminder, what friction basically is when you rub 2 things against each other, it's how much energy it takes to do that. So just as an example, if you try rubbing your hands together as fast as possible, they end up getting warm. So that means that you have some friction going on there, and then that friction gets released as energy. So in these sets of sports, in some of them, these ones over here, we like friction. Friction is a good thing for these sports. So just for example, in rock climbing, if we didn't have friction, we'd have a hard time staying on the rocks. These sports over here, though, are ones where we try to reduce the friction. So for example, in skiing, the faster we go and the longer we can go depends on keeping that friction as little as possible so we can slide over that snow. So same thing with the skating and even a bowling. So if we had big friction on a bowling ball, it's not going to go very far. So that wouldn't work so good. So when it comes to solving problems for friction, we've got some technology that helps us do that. So I'm going to show you a few examples here. So when it comes to skating, the Zamboni machine is a pretty famous example of technology that helps with that. So if you haven't seen one of those before, that's a big, huge machine that drives around on the ice. And what it does is when the ice is kind of rough from too many people being on it, it sprays a very thin layer of water across it. That water hits the ice, freezes, and then it gets all nice and smooth again. So we get that friction reduced. So Zamboni is one type of technology. When it comes to skiing, wax is helpful. So if you've ever been skiing before and you had too much friction there, usually mom and dad will probably take the skis to get them waxed. So where they put a layer of wax on there, kind of like rubbing a candle on there, and that helps to get it nice and smooth again, so you get that friction down. Another example for skating is sharpening the skates. So the smaller piece that you have touching that ice, the less friction you're going to have. So when you sharpen your skates, that gets that part touching the ice really, really small, so you get that friction down. All right, so that's some of the technology. Now when it comes to a little activity we can use to play with that today, we're going to talk about one more sport, and that sport is called curling. So if you haven't heard of curling before, it's actually been around a really long time. It was originally invented back in the 1500s over in Scotland, and it's really popular today in places like Canada or the northern United States, and it's actually an Olympic sport. It's been around for about 20 years in the Olympics. So the key things to curling, there's a stone, which is this big rock with a handle on it. And as you can see here, it's about a foot big. It's pretty big. It weighs about over 40 pounds. And the other thing you use is a broom that goes with it. So the challenge when you're curling, you have a big sheet of ice. And what one person does is they roll that stone down the ice. And then you have a couple other guys that try to make sure that that stone lands in just the right spot in the middle of the target at the other end. So sometimes they want friction and sometimes they don't. So that's where the broom comes in. So if they want friction, they just let the stone keep going because there's little bumps in the ice and that helps to slow it down. But if they want the stone to go farther, they've got to reduce that friction. So that's where the broom comes in to kind of rub and smooth things out. And then it can go and keep going even farther and farther. So if you'd like to try experiment with that a little bit at home, we can make a pretty simple curling court with a few basic supplies. So if you can see what I've got set up here, what you'd want to have is something to use as your stone. So that could be like a hockey puck or a roll of tape, or what I found were some things that we use to move furniture around to reduce friction when we do that. So this should work pretty good. So those will be at one end. So those are going to be your stones on your curling court. Then at the other end, you need to set up a target of some sort. So that could be as simple as a couple pieces of tape, or you could draw something on there. And then what your goal is to see how many times you can move your stones down into that court and hit the target. So the challenge here is if we have too much friction, it's not going to make it to the target. Or if we don't have enough friction, it's going to go past there. So we have to kind of practice and figure out, how do I get it so it goes right in that target? So we'll just try it a couple of times here. So if I do that one, oh, that worked pretty good. Or if I give it too much energy, it's going to go past there and then that wouldn't count. So, and you can use any kind of material for that. So I used what's called parchment paper. So mom and dad might have that in the kitchen. There's probably some other kinds of paper they could use, wax paper, construction paper. So try some different surfaces there and then get together a friend or a brother and sister and go ahead and make your own curling cord and see how many times, maybe out of 10 throws of the stone, you can get it to hit, or how many times in a row you can get it, and just have your own curling game at home. So give that a shot and see what you can learn about friction and trying to reduce or increase that. All right, with that, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week.